There are people all over the world who have committed themselves to becoming messengers and activists in the fight against the climate crisis. These people have been personally trained by Vice President Al Gore and some of the world's leading scientists in order to become climate reality leaders. And in just a moment, we'll tell you how you can join them. But first, let's meet one. Carl Duivenvoorden is here with us now. Hey, Carl.
Hi.
All right. So tell me, you were aware of the people's effect on the environment, if not the climate crisis specifically, from a young age because of where your school was located. Can you tell me more about what that was about?
Oh yes, I was raised in a small community in northern New Brunswick, Canada, my home province of New Brunswick, and the community's name was Beldoon. And when I was growing up, Beldoon was a two-industry town. We had a smelter and we had a fertilizer plant. And by some fate or circumstance, my elementary school ended up being right between the two of them.
Oh.
Right between those two industries. And I can remember very, very clearly as a kid going to school and on heavy days when the cloud hung over us, the smoke from the fertilizer plant, which was upwind of us,
right,
would hang over the schoolyard like a fog. And we weren't allowed out for recess. Or some days we might be allowed out, but we'd come back in and our throats would have a burning taste in. And you know, when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about the environment. Climate change wasn't even on anyone's agenda. But one thing I did know was this, and I think any little kid knows it, and it's that you don't keep a car running in a closed garage because you'll poison yourself. And people die that way.
Right.
And I think,
makes sense, right?
Yeah, but wait a minute, isn't the planet kind of like a really big garage? Nothing comes in, nothing goes out. So then I'd wonder, where does that stuff go? And the answer I always got was away. It goes away.
It just goes away.
Yeah, and it didn't work for me as a little kid. So it sowed the early seeds of concern about what we, all of us collectively, and not deliberately, are doing to our planet. But you know, I looked around, not too many people seemed to be too concerned either. So I continued. I finished school, I finished university. I got this great job not long after university where I was jet setting all over Latin America.
Right.
And then after that along came the Rio Summit. And I remember being really pleased about the Rio Summit because one, well, it sensitized me once again to all these childhood issues. And also, it was a sign that finally the world was starting to pay attention. It was a really good thing.
So that was the big shift for you. What led you to eventually become a climate reality leader?
Well, I wonder if I can if I can go back a little bit more. There was a big turning point in my life because the Rio Summit reawakened me in terms of need to do something. Again, I'd had those seeds sown early in my life, and I was raised by immigrants, which meant that we always lived in a resourceful house. We never wasted anything. That was a good thing.
Right.
But the big turning point came when my son was born. And that was, I think many parents would relate to that. 1999, my son was born, and I had this little voice in my head saying, do something. And I didn't know what to do. I felt powerless. And in 2001, my second son was born, and the little voice got louder. And I thought about something, what I could do. Right at the time, back then in 2001, CBC Radio, which is the Canadian equivalent of National Public Radio here,
right,
or the BBC in the UK, they had a daily commentary program, and it was an op-ed, and anyone could submit a story to it.
Right.
So I thought, I'm going to pitch a story about climate change from the perspective of a father with his new son. And it was accepted. So I wrote and delivered on air this little commentary that summarized from my perspective what climate change was, what the causes were, what the consequences were, and what the solutions were. And in it also, I made a couple of promises to my son and to his generation, like for example, that I'd never drive an inefficient vehicle. And I also promised that I would do what I could to make sure that climate change and all of our other environmental challenges become political issues at all levels of government.
So how do you feel now about Canada's government now with Justin Trudeau at its head? How do you feel about their prospects for addressing the climate crisis? And what are your hopes for the immediate future and the long-term future?
Well, I'm a lot more optimistic, as I think most Canadians would be, than we were some time ago. With our new government, they really seem to get climate change, and that's a very good thing. They've even changed the name of the department from the Department of Environment to the Department of Climate Change. So that's a very good thing. And they have indicated that they will impose a price on carbon across the country by 2019. And more recently, they've indicated they will phase coal out of all of our power generation at an accelerated rate. So it's going to be 2030 instead of a later date previously.
Wow.
So that's a very good thing from the political level. From the typical Canadian level, it would really make my day if we as Canadians all work to understand climate change just a little better,
right,
so that we'd be more sensitized as well just to how serious this is and the threat that it has to our lives and to our livelihoods and to our infrastructure, our coastlines. Because the fossil fuel industry, of course, has been a big part of the Canadian economy, and admittedly it's treated us well.
Right.
It's created a lot of wealth for us.
Right.
But now we know, science tells us we have to change, and it's tough to let go of something that has treated you well. But we have so much potential in renewable energy, and in fact, recently I heard that more people now work in renewable energy than work in the oil sands. So it's coming, but we've got so much potential in solar, in wind, in geothermal, in wave,
right,
in tidal.
Well, now, I mean, in your work now, real quick, you help companies and people become more efficient. So what would you advise people quickly? What do you think is the most effective way for Canada to go, forward towards a green future?
Well, I'm a big believer in price signals because it's all very nice if people do the right thing voluntarily. Everyone has a moral compass. We don't follow that necessarily as closely as we follow our internal money compass.
Right.
Because everyone has a money compass too. And today, without pricing on our environmental issues are technically what are called in economics externalities. Now, in other words, here, an example to make it simple. If you have two products and one of them is made in a really dirty way, but it's really cheap,
right,
and another one that's made really sustainably, but it's a bit more expensive, well, we'll buy the cheap one because it's human nature. We always buy cheap.
Right.
But if all of the costs of the environment were embedded into the cost of this dirty product, well, all of a sudden it wouldn't be cheap anymore, it'd be more expensive. And guess what? We'd all buy the green product because it's the cheapest thing,
right,
and we transform the market because guess what happens to expensive products? They disappear from the market. So price signals are really important, and a price on carbon is a great first start.
So you've been a climate reality leader now for more than a decade. How has it changed your life?
Oh my, it's changed my life a lot. I left a job to do this, and that was a very difficult decision. But it's been very, very fulfilling in many ways. I mean, it's fulfilling every time I give a presentation and young people come around and you can see in their faces, these are the beautiful generation, beautiful young people who come around, you can see in their faces that they really want to make a difference, or they speak of the impact the presentations have made. And I do a newspaper column now as well, and I often bump into people and they say, hey, you do that column, good stuff, I like it, I'm learning from it. So these are really, really fulfilling. I'd like to think I'm living a more fulfilling life and a lot closer to that spot where I'm doing what I should have been doing in the first place.
Thank you, Carl.
It's my pleasure.